Hello, my friends. If you've been in the detractor-verse for very long, you will probably have asked yourself this question at some point. Why do people keep giving DSP money? That is the question, right? Regardless of how cringe he is, the stupid things he does with his business, the rewards for his money that he takes in, it's all so ridiculous. But at the end of the day, he keeps making money. People keep giving him money. And like I've said before, he really just has a handful of people giving him the bulk of his support. He does receive a lot of small donations, but really it's just those 4 or 5 that are hitting his goals for him. Now, to hear him tell it, he's got hundreds or thousands of people giving him this money.
You see what I mean? Like, these people are just fucking snapped and weird in the head, but they have this really bad misconception that only like 1 or 2 people support me. You're wrong. It's hundreds, it's thousands, okay? Just that not everyone can come by and do a giant contribution every day.
But we all kind of know the type of person that's giving him money. In fact, generally speaking, it's pretty well known that his biggest contributors are people who are delayed. You know, they are not all there, we'll say. There's a reason we call them dents. It's not maybe the nicest name, but it basically just implies that maybe they were dropped on their head as a kid or something, because who would give this guy money? Anyway, one of the recent discoveries that we found is a guy named PWR, who is now actually a detractor, which that's a whole other story. We're not going to get into that today. But this is the type of person that is sort of manipulated into donating to Phil, and I'll explain that manipulation in a minute. And I'll give you my theory as to why it works, what exactly is happening when he manipulates these people. But this is just to give you an example of who we're dealing with. And this is Kino Casino reacting to PWR, explaining that he gave his last $35 to Phil and then was hungry.
You guys been watching DSP? I watched last night's stream. I donated about $35 last night.
Buddy! We got a dance alert! Dance alert!
I just wanted to give him a little bit of positivity. His birthday's coming up. 35, yeah, I'm 35 years old. Oh, you're talking about the money I gave to Phil? Yeah, it sucked because last night I wanted to give some positivity and then I got up today and I was freaking hungry. And I was like, man, I don't know if I should have donated that.
So that's who we're dealing with. People who hear Phil talk and decide he needs the money more than them, and then are hungry because of it. And I think that really sums up the base of his support. So today we're going to talk about something called Pignosis. That is sort of the term that has been coined when you're talking about how Phil gets people to give him money. So let's dive into that. If you'd like to like and subscribe, that would literally be hectic. I'm not going to lie. So Pignosis basically means Phil is able to somehow get into the minds of these people and convince them to give him money. Now, I'm not saying, and I don't think it's some kind of telepathic ability or anything like that, but it is absolutely manipulation. Now, the reason it works, in my opinion, is that Phil attracts people that might have special needs. He is so hyperfixated on his schedule and the games he plays and making sure he does the whole game if he can. And there is sort of a system in place where if he gets enough money, he plays. If he doesn't, he won't. And so that gives his streams a lot of structure and repetition. And that's just a comfortable place to be for somebody who may struggle with general cognitive ability. And as much time as he spends just talking about a specific topic, sometimes games, sometimes food, whatever, and his takes are so simple-minded that along with the repetition and everything, I think that is a comfortable place for people with special needs because they can kind of follow his logic. And there has always been some speculation as to whether or not Phil himself is like autistic or something. And that's not to say that the people that are giving him money are doing it because they're autistic, but it would kind of explain kind of why he speaks the way he does, a lot of his mannerisms, his thought processes, stuff like that. In fact, there's a channel called Takin Ls that did a series, a 5-part series, including a psychiatrist who is neurodivergent and then another neurodivergent person on the autism spectrum. And they talked about how if you look at everything Phil does through the lens of autism or neurodivergence, it all makes sense. So there is a possibility that that's the case, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter because he's an asshole. Regardless of what else he is, even if he would be able to get some sympathy or maybe some grace if he turned out to be neurodivergent or autistic or whatever, it doesn't matter because he's a complete dick to people that support him, to people that disagree with him, to anybody who he just decides deserves it, which is everybody but him. And I understand that calling them dense is not terribly nice. I mean, we likely are talking about people with special needs and people who are kind of victims of Phil's manipulation. But there's this weird sort of dichotomy because much like Phil, regardless of whatever else they are, they're also overwhelmingly just jerks. So they make it very hard to feel any sympathy for them. And I think what he's doing is manipulation, but I don't think he even realizes he's doing it. Now, that's not to give him a pass or to say that it's okay, because I think if he realized what he was doing, I think he would do it more. I just don't think he's smart enough to realize what he's doing. In my opinion, he just does what he wants, says what he wants, kind of thinks out loud, and that just happens to be very manipulative of people with special needs and the people that would be susceptible to that in his audience. So let me give you an example. One of the things he does very often is if somebody gives him a small contribution, he will basically dismiss it as though it is unimportant. And in his mind, I'm guessing, it just is. That's just the way he thinks. I got a $2 contribution. I would like to get more, so I'm going to say that. And here's a perfect example of that.
Let's get a tip to beat this $2 tip that we have as the top tip. Let's get some subs over on Kit. Let's get that support rolling right now. Let's get some momentum. Let's get some shout outs going and let's get some hype. Here we go. Let's do it. Let's get someone to beat all the top contributions, which are super low. $5 top super chat, $2 top tip. Let's beat those right now.
See? And if I was the person who gave that contribution, I would be like, well, fine. Fuck you then. You know, if you're not going to appreciate what I give you, why am I giving it to you? But that's where the manipulation comes in, because the people on his streams, at some point, they've decided that Phil is their friend. And when they give him money, they love to hear their name. The shout out is the reward for them. In my opinion, I'm just guessing, right? But I'm assuming some of them live for that attention. And they love to hear Phil basically say, you've done a good job, almost like he's a father figure. So what ends up happening is by saying, this is a small tip, can you do better? You know, basically, instead of thinking, well, if you're not going to appreciate it, then why am I doing it? What they think is, oh no, I need to do better. I think I can do better. So he's setting up a competition, not only between the dents and each other, but also between the dents and themselves. And so something kind of dawned on me when I was wondering, when they get treated like they're insignificant, why do they keep donating? But then I realized that being treated like they're insignificant is why they keep donating. They want to prove to him that they're not insignificant. And that's why you get people like OIC or Lance Catamaran or, you know, whoever, all of his socks. He gets this thrill. Again, this is just a guess, but I think he gets this thrill knowing that he is able to out-dent the dents and get the admiration and the appreciation from Phil more than the other dents. So while I don't think Phil is doing it intentionally, I think he just has like this perfect way of speaking that just really resonates with the type of audience that he cultivates. But another thing that sort of galvanizes his base is his echo chamber. It is sort of like a cult. He talks about his trolls so much, and the dents in his chat are so obsessed with making sure that he likes them because, again, they think he's their friend. When he talks about the trolls, they are on his side because the us versus them mentality.
If you do a good job, I'll tip more, but content has been bad. Yes, but Shinkin, you're a pocket troll. Like, we know that you're one of these LARPers. Half the time when you tip, you'll have a valid point in your first half of your tip, and then you'll immediately bring up a detractor meme. Like, we're not stupid. You might think that we all are. We're not. We're not dumb. We know who you are, and we know the things that you say with your tips and stuff, you know. So, you know, your opinion is a moot point.
So notice how he keeps saying we. We see what you're doing. You think we're stupid, but we're not. That Shinkin guy was not talking to anybody else. He was talking to Phil. But Phil says we, and it makes the dents feel like they're on his team. Like it's us against this guy who is half trolling, I guess. And I don't know what Shinkin has said in the past, but my guess would be that the valid stuff that he brings up is something about the game, and then he will say something like, why don't you do whatever? It's probably a legitimate criticism, but Phil always takes a legitimate criticism and says, oh, that's just a detractor meme, and ignores it. But by saying we are not stupid, we know who you are, that kind of thing, he is creating that us versus them mentality. And he perpetuates it by blaming all of his hardships and all the terrible things that have happened to him on the trolls. I mean, he blames the trolls for everything.
The money is so big and companies are paying everyone to do stuff. I'm well aware of that. And, you know, just like we know, I would never be able to be a part of that. Number one, because I don't want to be, because that's not part of who I am. I'm an honest guy. I'm not going to stand here and chill crap and play a game to pick a paycheck to do so. But also, no one would ever want to do it because of my trolls. Like, even though I have legit viewers and fans who like me and will listen to my opinions on stuff, and I do influence buying and not buying stuff with what I say, the insane morons out there, the weirdos, right, who just say messed up stuff about me constantly, they just harass too many people on the internet. To be honest, I don't think I'll ever get recognition in the mainstream. Why? The moment that someone who is bigger or mainstream wants to do something with me, here come the harassers. Here comes Kiwi Farms to dox them and their families. Here comes professional trolls to just slander them.
Even when you can prove that that's not true, it doesn't matter. Because again, he's in his echo chamber. As soon as somebody tries to correct him or tell the truth, you get your little lean in. They call it the lean in ban.
Okay. See if I can find a match. That's 4 in a row that were all awful. I'll keep quitting until they give me a match with a good connection.
So that's how it becomes an echo chamber. Anybody who disagrees or actually wants to set the record straight, you're out of there. And anytime he does respond to criticism or, you know, answers questions or whatever, it is almost always a straw man where somebody will be like, what about XYZ? And he'll go, why ABC? Because I'm not an idiot. That's why. And you're an idiot. So even if you get him to respond to anything, it's almost always just total bullshit anyway. So anyway, all of this is just because the other day when I heard him talk about those small contributions and treat the people that gave him that money like they were insignificant, it made me wonder, why do they keep giving it to him? But then it dawned on me that him treating them like they're insignificant is why they keep giving him money. They are constantly trying to prove to him that they're not insignificant. So anyway, that's just a thought I had. I appreciate you guys so much. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.